Hi, I'm Chandrahas Choudhury and I'm the author of the novel ARZEE the Dwarf, which came out in 2009 from HarperCollins. That was my debut novel. ARZEE tells the story of a very small man. He's 3 foot 5 inches tall, and when I made the title of the book ARZEE the Dwarf, the idea was that this word dwarf is both ARZEE's condition, he's only 3 foot 5 inches tall, and it's also the problem of the book. ARZEE dislikes the fact that he's so small. He wants to be accepted by the rest of the world. He wants everybody to treat him just like a normal adult being. But he finds out that his size always gets in the way of his encounters with people. And the book is the story of 2 weeks in ARZEE's life when he finds out a lot of things about himself. One of the things that's most important about ARZEE's story is that he works in an old cinema of Bombay called the Noor, and this is central to the book because ARZEE, when he walks on the streets of Bombay, which is what he often does, he's always looking up at the world, up at people, and when he works as a projectionist in the cinema, he's always looking down at the world because the projectionist room in any cinema is always at the top. So ARZEE has these two views of life, these two views on Bombay, and also a double life in the sense that he has a life that he knows from his past, but also a life of the imagination, a very powerful imagination, and the dreams that he has for himself. So the book is set in contemporary Bombay, and it tells the story of this, the troubles and the fantasies of this small man with a very big imagination. Well, you know, Bombay has been written about a lot now. There are hundreds of novels in Bombay, and as a writer in that tradition, you're always trying to wonder what it is that you can do that makes your book develop a voice of its own, a style of its own when it's writing about a city that's already been written about so much. So I thought about the idea many years ago when I saw suddenly, while I was just taking a bus in Bombay, a very small but very good-looking man crossed the road in front of me, and I wondered what it was like for him, A, to be so small, but B, also to be nice-looking, and whether he felt that maybe this was a kind of double joke that had been played on him. And out of that idea came lots of other thoughts about what I could do to make a story about this, and I first thought of writing this short story, and then I began to think there was a longer narrative inside of all of this, and when I sat down to write my first book, I had actually 3 or 4 different ideas which I wanted to work on, and I picked this because I felt it would challenge me the most, and also, you know, I'm not a standard realist writer. I mean, I like slightly brighter tones, like stronger sounds. So it seemed to me that if because ARZEE was so small and his imagination was so melodramatic, it would make for a style that would be different from, that would be natural to me, but different from what a lot of other Indian novels try and achieve. So that's what it was basically, and then it's 3 or 4 years of working, and the idea of ARZEE is working in the cinema, and the fact that he has these lows and these highs of the book, they all came in slowly, and that's one of the great pleasures of working on a novel actually, that you begin by knowing something, but you know a lot of other things by making the first step into a novel, and that's one of the pleasures of composition, that you learn a lot by staying with, you know, these days sometimes you don't even spend 3 or 4 years in relationships, personal relationships, so a novel is among the most stable things that you can enjoy time with in this world. It took a long time. I don't think my early drafts were very good, but that's part of novel writing. That's why it requires stamina and patience. I mean, it's not like some other forms of literature. It's definitely not performance poetry. It's you have to stay with your work till you feel satisfied with it. It took a long time. Well, actually, the thing is, you're thinking about it all the time subconsciously. So when you write a scene or a story, I mean, you're thinking about it all through the day or the months after, and also sometimes you read other stories, you go through other experiences, and when you write, your writing is always tinted by what you're going through. So I had a whole set of experiences by the time I was 26, 27, of joy, hurt, anger, love, suspicion, trust, all these things. So what you do is sometimes write your life into the story of another life, a made-up life, and the things that the reader can't tell what it is. And that's part of the joy and the pleasure of writing, to achieve that sort of transposition of ego, where the person you're writing about at some level is you, but in many ways is definitely not, and that's the kind of that's the pleasure of projecting out as a writer. You know, sometimes they come out not just out of happenings but out of language. You know, you think of a phrase that suits the character. For instance, at one stage ARZEE says, much of the novel is written in standard English, but at one stage he says, I'm really tired of this tanta life, and tanta is a kind of Bombay word for, you know, something that's like so entangled that you can't deal with it anymore. And sometimes you can find a phrase that opens up a character for you, and then you go back. Often you invent incidents, actually. I think the power of the imagination today in the novel is greatly underspoken of. Novelists are always getting asked, what did you do to research the book, or was this based on a real character, or was it based on your life? I mean, to some extent all of this is, but really the work that novels do that's different from what other books do is to extend the imagination and to apply the imagination to human stories. That's true. Bombay is the one city I've lived in more than half my life. It's the one city I know best. It's a city I love in a way from having struggled in it, worked in it, seen many of its layers, lived in many parts of Bombay, north, south, east, west, wandered around it a lot. So that world of Bombay is in ARZEE, and also a particular world of Bombay cinemas, which I went to a lot. You know, with any character, or in novels especially, lots of people ask, where is it set, or who is the protagonist? But in novels, background is as important as foreground. I mean, ARZEE is the foreground of the book, but Bombay is the background. And actually, ARZEE is not just the story of what I know about Bombay, it's the story of what ARZEE discovers about Bombay, because in the course of the book, ARZEE is actually a kind of slightly snobbish South Bombayite. He loves the neighborhood, Ground Road, even though it's very run down, where he works and has walked around all his life, and over the course of the book he has to wander around a lot because he suddenly is out of a job and he has to go to all these places in Bombay he doesn't know anything about. And also we learned that his father used to be a traveling salesman of soap detergent, so and his job was to walk all around Bombay trying to find new markets. So inside the book is a small map of Bombay that corresponds to what I know about the city, and that was one of the most pleasurable things about writing it. There's a scene where ARZEE and his girlfriend go to Alibag for the day. You know, that's something I've done in my own life, and the pleasure of leaving the city behind, looking at it from outside. I mean, all these things I wanted to put into it as my own sort of depth of gratitude to the city that has made me as a writer. Well, basically ARZEE has this big dream of wanting to become the head projectionist of the cinema, the Noor, where he has been working. And so we find out that for many years there's somebody above him who works as a projectionist. There's this old Parsi gentleman called Firoz, who's in his 60s and who's been thinking of retiring. ARZEE has been waiting for him to retire, but just has never happened. And then the first day of the book, where the opening scene of the novel is when we find ARZEE has some reason to believe now that Firoz is going to retire, and that for the rest of his life ARZEE is going to be head projectionist of the cinema. So we open the book on this moment of hope and of dreaming, and what follows after that is you know, the problems that come up in this, and so there's a kind of tension between the dreams that ARZEE has and the reality that he has to go through. Well, I think the one thing that I very deliberately did is that it's a very short book. It's only 180 pages, which by the standards of contemporary novels is not long. And I really wanted to do things that were particular to the book that I wouldn't do in my next books, but that suited the atmosphere of the novel. And one of the things about ARZEE's world is that everything happens in these 2 weeks inside the book. So the last line of every chapter has a kind of hook that leads into the next chapter. So the various time frames of the novel, 1 day, 5 days, 3 days, are all joined up by this linking. It's like a train engine, and all the carriages are linked up in this particular way. And it's one of the most enjoyable things to do as a novelist, actually, is you suddenly realize how difficult it is to create a sense of lived time. You know, what happens in half an hour, what happens in a day, how do you put all that into a book and structure it so that the reader experiences in the same way? Well, one of the things I enjoyed doing most, and from the few reports of readers I've got, the things that readers have enjoyed the most is that for long passages of the book there's no narration in the sense of somebody describing what is happening, but it's just characters talking to one another, ARZEE and somebody else. Many characters have one appearance, make just a single appearance in the novel. And those were some of the bits I most enjoyed writing, because it means that as a novelist you have to give up some of the things that you most rely on, which is being able to describe something all the time, and just sit back and let characters speak to one another, and let the story emerge from what they're saying. Even the backstory of somebody's life can come out from a conversation in the present of a novel. So these were some of the most technically challenging but fulfilling bits of writing the book.